Yeah.
Let me get up.
Who's this someone?
It's all messed up because I didn't really.
His percentage is like 96, something like that. But and then when I do the record report on those, eBay steps in and says,
You know, when you get ready. But we want to talk loosely for the moment. How many of you know what securities and securitization is? Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Very good, brother. You got the other mic?
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
Something that would back like a instrument, some type of instrument.
Yeah, it was an instrument, yeah.
Like a note or a check or something. So the security would be something that backed it. Whether it be some type of property.
Yes. Now be more specific with that something.
Like property.
Or
some type of service or goods.
property or
money.
no, it usually represents a transfer of something of value, but it's backed by what? Property or what? Chattel, living persons. All right? That's what must be important. And then basically, in the area that we're talking, this is what's going on, this is what's been going on. How many of you have an idea, any idea as to why the issue of nationality is being presented to the people at large in North America and on the planet? Any thoughts? Right. Well, the subject matter tonight, all right, let me know when you're ready. I could inadvertently read it. It's in a section of Lesson Book 14A1, Protocols of Liberty. And the particular section is important for you to have an idea of what's operating here. How many of you have heard of the, right. Islam Moors, welcome to the House of Reawakening Minds. Subject matter for tonight is securities and securitization. The great trick, the demo trick. And this is a continuation of information that you need to know and need to be very clear on. I know many of you have heard different people and different orders in these late years talking about set-off, discharge, claiming the birth certificates, swipe that, claiming the birth certificates, things like that. UCC1 financial statements, UCC1 claims, etc. 9, capturing the straw man, etc. All of that has to do with the global estate trust that we've talked about from time to time. And understand that the politics of North America and now the world contemporarily has been based on those dynamics, those realities. And what you recognize when you're talking to our people, even when understanding that they're conscious of a lot of things, you find that they're not aware of the real politics. which is why I asked the questions that I asked you. Because you need to know these things to know why you have problems, economic, social, and political. And of course, people pretty much kind of know stuff is kind of messed up. And to divert you from really having a comprehension of what's happening, people will throw passwords out there like racism and prejudice to keep you busy, when actually those are diversions. Are we clear? What's operating on the Earth planet, and particularly against the Asiatic people, is the unum sanctum policies of the Pope of Rome. And understand, when you think that your scholars, the so-called leader guys and leader girls, are not aware of this, you're sorely mistaken. Most of them, honestly and unfortunately, are compromised, which is why they do not deal with this subject matter. Are we clear? So don't get the idea that because you come to House of Reawakening Minds and we're bringing up these subject matters, that people in other organizations aren't aware of this information, i.e. whether they're in the churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, civic organizations, you know, the multiple alphabet soup organizations that claim to be dealing with people's rights and marching and praying, and these leader guys and leader girls, they all know this information. Pretty much the honest reality about our people's condition is that they've been pretty much sold out. Do you understand? And also, when really dealing with the real politics and the real economic policies that run the planet Earth, people have to start thinking. They have to start reading. They have to start studying, and above all, start taking responsibility. And so people look for shortcuts and deal with emotions. And opportunists seize upon that mentality and feed arguments in that area to project the idea that they're working for these people's rights. You know, and they run around, you know, saying things like black people and white people and make you think that they're doing stuff. All of that is BS and a diversion. You know, so we're going to discuss the real politics that's going on Earth planet, and it's not unattached to other classes that we've given. But again, in order for people to become competent, they must have a comprehension or an understanding of what's going on and why certain things are said and why they're not said. And we would prefer that you have an understanding of what we're talking about rather than just agreeing with us and saying, oh, that's cool, you know. Because if you don't comprehend the information, you know, it does you no good. The cause and purpose of us doing these classes is to actually not only liberate you from European colonial occupation, but also from persons who call themselves black leaders who are, most of them are actually COINTELPRO operatives. And it doesn't mean they're not nice girls and nice guys type thing. It means most of them are bought off. And most of your leaders and all of your so-called crayon people organizations are Masons. And in secret have a Moorish fez and know exactly the fact that these people are Moors. But they take oaths to Rome and to the Masonic orders not to reveal the secret, and the secret is actually, pardon me, you. Do you understand? The great Masonic secret is the people that think that human beings are crayons and think that none of this other information or secret societies have anything to do with them, when it has everything to do with them. Everything to do with them. From the information base that's preserved, as well as the operational politics, as well as methodologies for oppression, expurgatorius, prohibitorum, and keeping information from you. Are we clear? Those are facts, you know, and don't look at it emotionally, look at it with intelligence. And then take this information, do cross-references. We're going to give you some points of reference so you can do cross-reference. And start liberating yourself and liberating your families. And understand this for sure. The major problem that most of our people have is that they don't know the difference between de facto and de jure. They don't know the difference between allodial and feudal. All of these things are in operation. They don't know the difference between the republic and the democracy platform. And all of these are relative to you in every political aspect. Are we clear? And operative every day that you lay down on your bed and every day that you come out into the world and even buy a cookie. It's involved, you know, and the fact that on the surface, most people can't immediately answer those questions that I just asked you, demonstrates to you why we do these classes. And understand, as long as you, when I say you, I'm talking about us plurally, are not aware or competent relative to what's really going on, there's no threat to the system, because that's what makes the system work. And if you don't know that you're the food, you never suspect that you're the fuel for the engine that's abusing you. And if you're not aware that the people who deal with you every day have secret societies to preserve this knowledge for themselves and keep it from you, you never suspect why you're always getting injured, why you're always getting cut out of things, why you're always getting screwed. Are we clear? And again, that's why you hear House of Reawakening Minds. Securities are essentially instruments set up by the barristers of England with their branch operatives at North America called the American Bar Association, i.e. attorneys, esquires, and lawyers, all who have taken on what is known as titles of nobility that do not belong to them, and who are in operation particularly at North America for the specific purpose of undermining the republic while pretending to preserve the rights of people. Are we clear? The sooner you understand that fundamental principle, the sooner you'll understand why you're in economic, social, political troubles. Are we clear? They are actually deputy knights for the popes of Rome under the unum sanctum policy. And it's actually unum sanctum hegemony that's actually operating. The unum sanctum hegemony is presented to the people under the mystical title of what they loosely refer to as white supremacy, which is also a diversion. Are we clear? It's really unum sanctum hegemony. Now, when you are aware of what's really going on, you're better equipped to start dealing with it. Are we clear? And understand one of the major factors of their operations is what is called substitution, counterfeit, prima facie, artifice, de facto. Are we clear? If we had another board, I'd write them down, but when you come here, you already know that you come here with notepads. So try to take notes, because limited work can only be done in a few hours. But these will give you reference points that you can develop your thoughts and concepts later. Now, securities is essentially operative at North America under occupational powers of Rome, administered from Westminster, which is called District London, England, which is the center star of the shield that you see in Washington, D.C. And for those who are not aware of it, understand that Philadelphia, which is the cover name for Amexem, is the capital for the United States. Still is. For those who don't know, they think that Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States. It is the capital operations for the private United States Service Corporation registered in France, Guam, and Puerto Rico, that operates on the land at North America under unum sanctum policy. And it is a substitute, or what you call a de facto political platform to deceive the people who don't understand or know the real history here, to submit to them under what was called, what you would call the sovereign powers of the British Crown. And that's where the source of your problems are coming from, economic and political. Are we clear? You must be clear on that. Now, for those of you who already know, what is known as the Act of Congress 1871. All right, the Act of Congress 1871 is the construction of the demo platform that was politically set up for the barristers of England for the subversion of the legitimate republic that was set up at the North Gate under treaty between the Moroccan Empire and Britain, i.e. the European nations, are we clear, for them to do business at the ports at Northwest Amexem. This is why the determination for structured government at North America is referred to as the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And of course, you already know the adoption of the Constitution for the United States, which comes from Muslim law, which Obama exposed to everyone when he went to Egypt, was adopted 1788, ratified 1789, and then George Washington, who was a general at the time, was considered to take the place of Benjamin Franklin, who was a minister plenipotentiary under the treaty. Negotiations with the Moors were setting up government operations at Northwest Amexem, i.e. the North Gate, North America. And so you will find that all Shriners and people that belong to your higher orders, secret orders in the world, refer to North America as the North Gate. And I'm sure some of you have heard some of your family members who may be Shriners or people associated in your higher degrees of Masonry refer to themselves as the keepers of the North Gate. That's North America, or what you call Turtle Island, and you're under occupation. This is the source of your economic and political problems, are we clear? Now, for those also who have some misunderstandings or misconceptions of what the Moorish Divine and National Movement is about, understand that Noble Drew Ali, who's known as Prophet Noble Drew Ali, set up an order for the restoration of the estate that has been under occupation. Are we clear? You must know that, you must understand that, because a lot of people look at it as a religious belief system, which is a false concept. It's the restoration of the occupied estate of the descendants of the ancient Moabites, who in short are referred to as Moors. Are we clear? The true Al-Moroccans or the true Americans. Are we clear? All right. So the politics that you're dealing with in these lessons has to do with the vast estate that has been hypothecated from yourselves, which is why our communities are the poorest, because we're the heirs of the estate who are being robbed. Are we clear? To divert you from that reality of the politics, they will promote amongst you leaders, guys and leader girls, who will emphasize that someone doesn't like your color or that they're racist, and that's why you have problems. No, you have problems because you're under occupation. You have problems because it is institutionalized. Are we clear? And the political platform for its administrative operations is called the U.S. Democracy Corporation. And the deception is to promote the idea to those who don't understand the real history and law that the Democracy Corporation is actually a country or the country of North America. And that is a de facto platform. And logically, if they raise you up from childhood to believe that the United States Corporation Company is a country, you give it honor and respect that it actually doesn't apply. And you also submit to Roman law, thinking that you're submitting to Constitution principles. Are we clear? When they bring brothers and sisters who happen to be in what you call power positions into the orders of Masonry, or when they refer to them as free and accepted Masons, they're given such information that liberates them from that misinformation. Are we clear? And they're able to navigate within society on another level while still being involved with you every day. However, they have to take oaths not to reveal the secrets. And the truth of the history, including the philosophies, etc., are given in signs, symbols, and allegorical stories. It is not wrong, it is just diverted. Are we clear? And this is the reason why usually people, including Masons and Eastern Stars themselves, when talking to people outside of the order, will give a negative connotation to cause people to be disinterested. Are we clear? To cause people to be disinterested or think it's, the devil and things like that. So that keeps you in a subordinated position because you never suspect that it's all about yourself. So long as you don't know yourself, and as long as you don't know the real history, there's nothing that you would do to upset the apple cart. In other words, you're being trained to be serfs. And the educational system is structured to accommodate that. Are we clear? And this is where and why they have what is called connotative linguistics that is promoted amongst our people, distinguished from denotation as well as etymological principles in etymology, all right, which are basic to reading skills. See, so the people, one, can't read, can't decipher, they can give them dead pledge instruments, they can promote bank bonds as divine things. As an example, most of our people think that when they get a marriage certificate that they're making a covenant between themselves, their wife or their husband, and the Lord in the heavens, not knowing that it's actually a bank bond that's regulated by the Lords of London and has nothing to do with anything divine, has to do with body selling and a claim on the eggs in the womb and in the fallopian tubes. And understand that leader guys, reverends and bishops, priests all know this because they're a party to it. And they get kickbacks when they sell these licenses and they go down and register them in vital statistics and they get kickbacks. And they're part of the system. And so when people, as our people develop, families and everything, and they have different problems with their families and their children, with the corporate state, this is the basis upon which the corporate state operates on these bank instruments, where these people think they are divine covenant oaths between them, the Lord Jesus, Allah and God, and Moses and Muhammad in the sky, and they're actually pledges, hypothecation pledges to the banks, to the Lords of London, to the Bishopric of Rome, to the Pope of Rome, who is Earth God. Are we clear? He is declared God on earth. Are we clear? Don't take it personal, this is just what it is. But you need to know what's in operation, and then you need to have other information so that you can start countering what they've done to you and what they continue to do to you. Not by emotion, but by knowledge. Are we clear? So the subject matter tonight is securities and securitization. Securities is essentially when they take the interests of a person, a living man or woman, and pledge your body, your labor, and all of your estate, and all future taxation that they draw off of you, create a bank bond, and then create derivatives on it, and lay it on the stock market, and then get your signature, whether it's a marriage certificate, birth certificates, driver's license, etc., and it's really a bank bond, and then they take your signature and then convert it on what is called a double ledger. Pay attention to this because we're not putting this on the board. It's called double bookkeeping. And what they do is they take any signature of anything that you get from the corporate demo platform. So the demo platform would include the board of directors that are pretending to be Congress. That's very clear that you must understand what I'm saying to you. The people who have been telling you that they're congressmen for the United States are really secret board of directors for the United States Service Corporation registered in Puerto Rico, which is bankrupt. Are we clear? This is why all of their legislation is designed to cost you rather than to protect you, to tax you rather than to secure your rights. Are we clear? To jail you rather than to liberate you in every factor, and to benefit the military operations of the Jesuits, which is the pharmaceutical industry, and the military complex. Are we clear? Backed up by the Pope's Army, which is administered from Washington, District of Columbia, Roman goddess. Are we clear? These are truths and realities that you need to know to understand why we're giving you this information. And then keep this in mind. All dark priests, understanding divine law and how things actually operate, will focus on getting you to consent to things. And so their operations in general is to miseducate anyone that goes to any one of their institutions, then use your miseducation against you. Their whole operation is based on fraud and deceit. Are we clear? Deceiving you, one, to think that they're the legitimate government, which secretly they overthrew in 1861. That's what the Act of Congress is, of 1871. It's the platform that they finalized to operate what is called the treasonous sellout. Are we clear? Now, keep in mind, all scholars know this information, all politicians know this information, all council people, all mayors, etc. All your so-called scholar black marching leaders that run around the place marching and stuff, talking about civil rights, they all have this information, and every one of them is Masons. You know, and it's not anything against them personally, it's just a fact. And I say it is more important for the liberation of our people than to preserve the images that they have of black leader guys who march around the place talking about 14th Amendment civil rights that actually is stock for 55 Water Street, New York. See, so you've not only been deceived by Rome, you've been deceived by black leader minions that they've sent out there to promote the code system that puts you under the hypothecation instruments in the name of the Lord all the time, not knowing that they're talking about the Lords of London. You know, and this is why it works so well, because people think that as soon as someone throws the word Lord around, that it means Jesus in the sky type thing. Or that when they're talking about God, that it means the Creator, not knowing it means government ordinance departments of the Vatican. It's government, you know. And so this has been going on for quite a few centuries. And knowing that, you know, people in position of authority always knew this stuff. You know, so one of the difficult things to liberate people is that they really have these grandiose ideas and images of their leader guys and leader girls who belong to all these different organizations that call human beings crayons. You know, light-skinned, orange-skinned, green people, and it doesn't matter what color you are, on color coalition and somebody else's coalition, you know, this league and that league and everything, alphabet soup, and never teach them constitutional principles. You understand? Never teach them structured government. You know, this is why a lot of times, like when you hear them talking about people like Marcus Garvey or Noble Ali, who taught strict and precise operative civics, which deals with government structure, petitions, parts of branches of government, respect for government, understanding sovereign powers of government transferred from the people, the honor, the integrity, constitutions, treaties, their operations, international law, etc. And this is why you will not see them talk about constitutional principles, treaty principles, and enforcement covenants, etc., in international law, because they really don't want our people capable of interfacing with the international community because they're declared stateless persons. Are we clear? This is why the Negro, Black, and colored brands are in place that designate stateless persons, because there's no such existing nations on Earth planet. Those are clearly brands set up by the Dutch masters, particularly, and reinforced since 1779 from the East Indies Dutch company operating at North America to distinguish their property from free men. So when you're talking about free men, you're talking about it on the surface, immediately, people who have international law protections and they will have a nationality. As an example, it has nothing to do with skin complexion, it has to do with your nativity and the fact that you're part of the human family recognized by the rest of the nations of the earth. And this is why all major cities on Earth planet will have the different vexillum or flags, national standards that represent the different mothers on Earth planet called nations and nationalities. And the laws that come together in civilization that protect the rights of the human family are called constitutions, and they emanate from nations, which is why they're called international law. So to remove the heirs of the great estate from international law protections, they remove the nationality. How do you know it? Because those are the only people that walk around calling human beings crayons and think it's an identity. Then that's reinforced by people who they respect, you know, who say Jesus, God, Allah, and Moses, and Muhammad, and stuff like that, and then they turn around and call you black man. Understand that's a code and telco operation. You know, whether you like it or not, it's what it is. Now, and this is again why such persons are trusted. When you see them dealing with other nationals, you'll see even other Asiatic nationals come from other parts of Asia and Africa, and when they run into brothers and sisters here in the north, and after they talk to you, they hear your accent, they know you're on, you know, you're continental. And then when you tell them that you're black, all of a sudden the treatment totally changes because you just told them that you're proper. You understand? And by the people being convinced that it's an identity, they don't suspect why they're being rejected or dissed or treated less than. As soon as they agree to the black, then they come under the Christian black codes, then they mad about the treatment they get when they agree to be chattel. Because one of the rules on Earth planet is to honor your mothers and your fathers. And the common law that trumps the canon law is derived from the nativity of the being. So no matter how many generations have passed, you start claiming to be the name of another man or another people, you've lost your birthright. This is basically what is stated in the Dred Scott case of 1854, 1857, where the argument was beautiful, everything was correct, arguing territorial dispensation relative to slavery not being held in Missouri, and the real deal is his arguments presented as Dred Scott. He's not Dred Scott, that's the Europeans. And so you cannot transact business in another man's name and then be allodial. It doesn't go together. Now logically, not understanding that, then they're promoting the Negro, which means monkey, and black thing means people think it's identity, and then they go out into the world seeking rights that belong to humans, are denied, now they're mad marching all over the place. And then people know that they're incorrect but won't correct them because we have egos and we can fight pretty good. You know, it's the truth. And so they're not going to sit and argue with people that got Jesus and nobody else does. So if you got all that, you know, they expect you to make your own sandwiches, you know, which is logical. And of course, then we pass it down to the next generation and the problems continue and get deeper. Meanwhile, not knowing the existence of the global estate trust that was set up by the popes of Rome after the unum sanctum policy after the conquest of the Moorish nation. Not knowing that we're the heirs of the estate, we're acting like everything else but who we are we clear? And then out of frustration, we join a whole bunch of alphabet soup organizations trying to fix the problem when we don't even know the history of the problem, which makes us incompetent. Are we clear? So when I asked you those questions in the beginning, you know, about securities, securitization, you know, the Act of Congress, 1871, stuff like that. And if you're not familiar, and then we're all adults, logically, the children don't have a chance. Because they can't know what you don't know. You know, and so such persons are also listed in law as minors. In the plural, they're called minorities. And even told that that's an identity. And they even use that as an identity, which also puts them under Christian black codes. Now they may again. And they're marching all over the place. To no effect, not understanding that they're incompetent. And logically, once in a while, sometimes Asiatics from Asia or South Asia, which we now call Africa, will try indirectly to talk to us, and then we start getting emotional or self-righteous and the conversation stops, and then they just back off and let us stew in our nigger juice. You know, because it's like talking to a brick. You know, and so after a while, when you see somebody got an ego, when you see somebody, and this is a difficulty that some people have that come here to the North Gate, sometimes if they try to drop little significations at us to wake us up a little bit, and we start getting all self-righteous like Jesus made us, and whether they made salat or not, and they haven't prayed and all this stuff, we'll give Reverend Jones $5, and as soon as we start that kind of stuff, they already know, stop while they're ahead, you know. And so, because most of them are pretty much told that if they deal with us, you know, stop at the hardware store, get a thick piece of plexiglass, get the building that's been empty since these people have been going to school. They're not burdened by the nigger tax that our people don't even know exists. And then they do business about 3 years to get wealthy, sell it to another national, and that cycle continues. And our people ain't caught on yet. Because they're saved and nobody else is. They got the Lord, nobody else. So people don't exactly feel sorry for us because we're arrogant. There's one thing to have lack information, which is a level of ignorance. But ignorance or not knowing is ignorance. But not knowing and then being arrogant, that's really ignorant. And we don't understand why a lot of people reject so-called black people. And it has much to do with the arrogance that we carry with our lack of information, which is ignorance. And so therefore, people don't exactly feel sorry for us taking advantage of us. This is why you can see a lot of people come from around the world, set up business in these so-called black communities, get wealthy, and our people ain't figured out yet how that keeps happening. But it gives them a reason to march around again and complain. And then their leaders are trained in oratory skills, you know, to complain beautifully. You know what I mean? And call people racist artfully. You know, don't fix nothing. Plus they cost a lot of finance. They usually wear expensive suits and they got planes and stuff and 2 houses. You know, a yearly trip to the Bahamas with Jesus' half. You know, all this kind of stuff. And this goes on a regular basis. Let me say this to you. Mortgage means dead pledge. How many people know that? Raise your hand. I want you to look around the room. Mortgage means dead pledge. Look around the room, look, average in your mind the percentage, average in your mind. And then consider how many people and their families have mortgages, whether themselves or by their parents, and don't even know what the word means. It means dead pledge. The contract is dead, and you're the pledge. And the estate is converted to the Jesuit order through the United States franchise states of corporate entities and agencies and banks and law firms. And they sign these instruments every day, and then they're called drafts. They're called due bills, write this down, due bills, D-U-E, bills, and they're also referred to as demand drafts. So whenever they make the instrument, which is the mortgage or the dead pledge, how many people did it ever dawn on them that this instrument here is also one of these? And that this instrument is also one of these. And that this instrument is also one of these. And so is driver's license. Now logically, not necessarily logically, but inadvertently, some of your marching, pray, and keep hope alive leader guys aren't going to tell you that because they got a 501c3 skull and bones agreement kickback payment to keep them maintaining this misinformation that runs the so-called black community. Are we clear? So I guarantee you that usually they have 2 or 3 cars, 2 or 3 women, 2 or 3 houses, fat bank account, fly all over the daggone place, and artfully complain about the conditions of our people with no solutions whatsoever. Are we clear? And it goes on year after year after year after year. And our people give them all kinds of rewards and banquets and dinners and stuff, and do the salami bologna thing when they show up, not knowing their co-interrogators. And that's not personal, it's just a fact. And if you're going to liberate these people, don't sit around trying to protect the images of leader guys and leader girls. Just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. You understand? Because them babies are at stake. And that same baby, right there, in short order, will be sitting here or somewhere else, just like you, with another baby in his arm, and they'll be worse off because they have less reference points. You understand what I'm saying to you? Meanwhile, the people around them who have been living quite wealthy knew this information all the time and took oaths of death to Rome not to reveal the secrets. And they get nice little cushy jobs, some political token job, until they're no longer useful. You know, but that's how things pretty much run here. And what they do, they usually, like people who are compromised, they'll give them a comfortable job. The higher you go up, like say if someone's in say your higher, it's not really that high, but what you call council areas of the larger cities, and then what was called the congressional halls, they'll give them ambassadorships and stuff like that to keep them busy, or you know, keep them compromised, and then put them in compromising positions to keep them in check. And that's how much it pretty runs. But do not ever think that as we're having these conversations that people in other organizations, churches, mosques, synagogues, etc., civic organizations, and we're talking about all of them, NAACP, P1Me, We Be Together, and all the rest of the crew, all of them know this information, but they will stay away from this information. Are we clear? And I'm not saying that to condemn them, I'm saying that to inform you why they always get funded, but fix absolutely nothing. And then the Europeans come in our communities, gentrify, take the people's houses, take their bank accounts, kick doors down, take their children when they feel like it, kill their young women and men on the street, steal their organs, no one goes to jail. And then they march and play all around the place again and call themselves U.S. citizens, not knowing it means stock, because they can't read. You know, and then if you try to give them this information, they think you're attacking their beliefs. It's all training. Are we clear? Now, securitization under the Unum Sanctum Bulla set up by the Pope of Rome, they declared the Moors dead at sea until proven otherwise. Are we clear? And that you have abandoned your estate, and by virtue of occupation, they're administrating over your estate. Are we clear? And this is the basis upon which the popes of Rome set up what's called the hegemony, which is later called by people who know less white supremacy. It's not an attitude, it's a church policy. And then the greater power part is to pay off some of the leaders amongst the defeated people to run the churches for them, to have the people fund their own slavery. When they're really worshiping Constantine, claiming to be worshiping Jesus. Are we clear? This is why when before We erased the board. I told you to write that down, take pictures of it, or put it so that you can understand the politics, because it's all connected. Every lesson that we give you is connected to something we've told you before. The issue is that we want you to become effective. Are we clear? Pardon me. Now, what is done, let me explain to you what is done, and so that you can understand what securities are. It is where they, in the name of sovereign authority, representing persons who are called U.S. citizens or Negroes, blacks, colors, because understand they're all 14th Amendment stock. That they're not identities. Are we clear? They're tags or nom de guerre. They're war names. They're used for trade purposes. That's why they're called men of straw. Are we clear? 14th Amendment persons, which is a corpse, the dead. Are we clear? And they take you and any, or what they would call issue, particularly from the female, which means the postal room have claimed the eggs in the womb with the help of the lower priest who marries them under the corporate state and delivers them to Zeus, Roman god, under the guise of Jesus, who are really worshiping Constantine. Are we clear? That's an agreement. So they have sold themselves, and this is the position they've taken, that you sold yourself. This is why you hear them always say, when people challenge, they'll say your mother sold you. And then they'll talk about the birth certificate, not the marriage certificate, birth certificate. And that's only because people of late have been starting to study and found out what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. And so much focus is put on the birth certificate when it's actually the marriage certificate, birth certificate, all mortgages, driver's licenses, all of them are dead pledges against your body, your rights, your liberties, your inheritances, and your estate. Be clear on that. Are we clear?
Yeah.
This is the premise upon which and how and why Europeans act arrogantly superior to our people. It's not that they feel necessarily that they're better than you, which is the promoted idea. It's because from the orders of the Popes of Rome, they own you. And even though you may present a good argument or attitude like you got this going on, in the background they know whatever you say or do don't matter to them because they own you. Not by divine law, but by political operations, are we clear? And then when they want, you make them really angry, then they create problems for you. You wonder why you have problems. Or why the IRS goes in and seizes your accounts, or DIFUS or some other order comes in and takes people's children in the middle of the night for no court order. They don't need any, these are property. Now, we're not talking from the moral or ethical point of view, we're talking about real political operations. You're given this information so that if you care to be more responsible to yourself and in honor, that you will have the right state of mind to begin to cure some of this. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Clear.
It is important for the dark priesthood to operate against you with your consent, even if they deceive you. Are we clear? So, it's called the dual ledger. All activities that take place with them are put in what you call double ledgers. And the double ledger would essentially be what you would call creditor, debtor, grantor, grantee, lender, borrower, things like that. Are we clear? Now, anytime they create a mortgage, and they know that when these people go down to the corporate cities or town ships, that they don't know that they're dealing with admiralty law. Are we clear? They're thinking that they're dealing with constitution principles and stuff like that. They're dealing under admiralty laws of the sea, under the authority of the Holy See, who is the Pope of Rome. Are we clear? Then they think they're doing something with Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, and they get marriage certificates, thinking that that's some kind of divine ritual between them and the lords in heaven, when it's really the lords of London. And it's a bank bond. It's a mortgage. It's a debt pledge. And through it, the popes of Rome claim not only the female as a cow, they say it in French, chattel, which is really French for cattle. They claim the eggs in the womb even before they hatch. For the eggs that hatch later, that's what the birth certificate is for. But they're all dead pledges. They're all mortgages. Are we clear? So the person or the people who grow up thinking that they have some kind of special divine relationship with Jesus and stuff, with their relationships, and actually they're ships in the night at cross, and the corporate state is the higher, what you would call, party in the triad. And the triad is the corporate state, the man and the woman, who are subordinate to the contract of marriage that they made with the state, and it's actually a registry. Are we clear? It's a registry, and it's a bank bond. Are we clear?
Yeah.
All issue belongs to the state. They are called wards of the state. That's a nice way of not saying slave of the state. Are we clear?
Yeah.
And so these people, because they said prayers to Jesus, God, and Allah, you know, and they think that they're outside of the auspices of Roman powers. See, so if people are in that state of mind, they feel pretty secure, and most of them can live most of their life and never know that they're serfs. Except when a family member dies and the state comes take the estate or the property, or taxes the children out of it. That's when they start discovering that they're property. It still ain't dawned on them that they're property though. Most of them, are we clear? Or like, as an example, and isn't this interesting? As an example, like say for instance, someone might buy or transfer some private commercial paper on the fiat currency for say a BMW that costs 55, 60, 70,000 notes in the name of dollars, right? And pay for it in say 4 years or something like that, right? And at the same time, they can buy a house for $50,000 and be in debt for 35 years and still don't be paid off, and they figured out what's happening. Because it's a dead pledge. It's a mortgage. Mort is Latin for dead. The gauge is contract or pledge. You see? And so they just made a dead engagement, and then the operative for the Pope will create what is called a mortgage and a promissory note. Write this down. This is very important to understand. But the mortgages are promissory notes. The promissory note is what is used to transfer the alleged debt on you, who are really the creditor, because it's actually your estate that they're moving everything on because you're under occupation. This is why it's important for them to promote such information that causes you to forget that they're foreign Europeans settled in other people's lands. Then to convince you to start calling them white people, which means sovereign, or Americans when they're actually Europeans. At that time, you just converted your estate to them. You just justified their claim. Are we clear? This is why they have paid off so-called black leaders run around talking about black people, white people, as if they're identities, and then call them the European American, and look what America did to the black man, those type of things. And it sounds like they're working for their own people. They just sold you out because they know that you can't read. But Masons, Eastern Stars, people of any secret society, know that person just cast a spell. A person who can't read, it never dawns on them that person just cast a spell. And justified your negative position. Do you understand? They're black guys, you know. They're sold you out. That's why a lot of times when the Europeans get frustrated with us marching and praying all over the place, taking up space and disturbing peace, they'll get frustrated every once in a while and say, why don't you all leave us the hell alone and go back to your black leaders to keep selling you back into slavery? Oh, they're racist. The cycle starts again. Because they tell you the absolute truth. But we're usually involved with trying to protect the images of our leader guys and leader girls, thinking that, you know, they're being spiritual because they say Jesus and Allah and God and stuff like that. As soon as they call you black, they just put you under the black codes. When they know, and this is not absent in any format, they know that these people called Negro, black, and colored are Moors. Know it. Divinely, scholarly, factual, and politically. Are we clear? And this is, again, why even, you know, Rahm Emanuel, he's called the Jew that left Obama's administration. One of the things that he did as soon as he took office in Mecca of the West, which you call Chicago, he issued a proclamation the first full day of the winter solstice and literally told who these people are. Bluntly sealed it from his desk. And so-called black leader guys sitting around calling these people black. Are we clear? And this was a year before Obama went to Egypt and exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. Michelle goes to the Alhambra because that is when they set up the old global estate trust after the fall of the Caliphate in Al-Andalusia, which is later called Spain. That's 1492, that's why that's used as an axis here. So keep in mind, the whole political platform on earth since 1492 is to create securities to administer all properties, resources, and hereditaments to the estate of the Pope of Rome via the three-step operations: Washington, D.C., Westminster, District of London, the Vatican. That's world politics on earth plane. Are we clear? This is what occurs. Every time you apply for anything in the corporate state, it's securitized. Anything that you put a signatory to is securitized. It's a negotiable instrument. Are we clear? That negotiable instrument being turned back to any agency under states of orders, which are actually private corporations pretending to be the republic operations sanctioned by the Moors when they're actually de facto platforms. As an example, this territory that's called State of Delaware, right, is the demo platform distinguished from Delaware State Republic that comes under Constitution and international law operations, securing the rights of the people of the land and people who are parties to it in a political platform. That is allodial in character, distinguished from feudal operations, which is absolutely the platform for the state of Delaware. Are we clear? But they know that most people don't know the politics and they don't know how things operate, and their leader guys and leader girls ain't telling them because they get a few pieces of slugs that they call a few pieces of silver, and they sell them out for a few pieces of silver, which is referred to loosely, even though that story is improperly told, which is called the Judas factor. All right? So what they do when you sign for a marriage certificate, it is securitized. They create a promissory note, same thing, because they're all mortgages. Now, the promissory note, like say, if someone signs an instrument called the deed pledge, it becomes a security, because it's really a bank bond. They will take it and they'll put it on what is called the asset side of the ledger, and then place your position on the debtor side of the ledger. But understand, in fact, this is fact, when you present that instrument, it becomes what you call also an IOU, or what is called a demand draft. And so what they do the bookkeeping and they switch sides when actually they've been credited with energy from your estate. But they'll list you as a debtor and then convert the instrument into a bond, create derivatives, put it on the stock market, and then get funds sold as U.S. Treasury bonds around the world to other nation states, and draw off of that, and then turn around and buy substance in the name of administering over your estate, i.e. as government representatives, which they are not. Are we clear? You got to remember, for those of you who understand those dynamics, understand the cause and reason for what is known as the Clearfield Doctrine of 1942, and why the representatives for the Clearfield Trust Company in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, were successful with that case, based on what I'm just telling you right now. Are we clear? But it's important for you to have the concept so that when you are injured economically or politically relative to any instrument that they may have in their possession with your signature on it, that you have a fallback. Now, the real deal of it is, what occurs is whenever any instrument relative to any of the operations against the estate is executed, they will convert it to, or do it in the name of the dead. And the name of the dead is the all capital letters that you will see them placed on like so-called bills that they present to you as a bill. They're actually statements of account against the global estate trust set up by the popes of Rome under the auspices and operations of the United States military complex operations, where the debt is already paid because they came here to steal our gold and silver, and then they put in its place private fiat currency or private fiat commercial paper belonging to the Jesuits underneath the banking system, which is really the bench of the Pope, enforced by the military operations from Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Are we clear? This is how it operates. So when you're dealing with them, or what is really supposed to be taking place, you're supposed to be recouping, it's called recoupment. So write that down, recoupment, of what you gave them. And why do you desire and want recoupment? This has much to do with, for those of you who already have information that we've given you before, this has much to do with the nature of the reversionary position that you take. In the reversion article that we've given you, reversion. How many of you got the reversion? We've given it to you on your flash drive. That's what that position actually is. Now, also understand that in the real light of political operations, when you nationalize, that's what you're saying to the world. You're claiming your estate. And your estate is not just the land and the resources, it's also your body. And so that creates problems for Rome's instruments. Understand, the whole platform is a war machine. And so in a direct battle, you will never win against them. What you have to do is fight them on what is called the ethereal side. Loosely, that would be called the spiritual side. All right, so when you demonstrate publicly that you're rejecting their claim of authority over your sovereign right of body, what occurs, it contaminates the operations of the transfer of these derivatives around the world under U.S. Treasury bonds. And they start what you call dying, curling up, becoming useless, because they're dead paper in first, because they're dead pledges. See, but long as the heirs demonstrate that they're incompetent or they don't comprehend what's up, and that they're wards of the state, it's like you've given them your sovereign right to administer over you. And then by continuously demonstrating that you're not aware or incompetent of understanding what's going on, they declare you incompetent and a state ward, and then arbitrarily take control of your estate under hypothecation operations. And then they have the Sister QV Trust that they set up, which is the Negro, Black, and Colored brands in the all capital letters, and you never rebut it and never claim reversion of your estate, and so they say that you've abandoned your estates. This is why if you look into public records, almost all your mortgages or foreclosures are declared abandonments. Not lack of payment, abandonments. They may approach you on the basis of lack of payment, when the real deal, it's never paid because it was already paid when you started because it's actually your estate. So what they do what is called a discharge or a set off in your name, which is why they always want you to get mortgages whenever you are transferring any what's called estates. They almost insist that you get mortgages, even if you got what you're calling cash. Because they want that instrument because they create multiple bonds on it. Are we clear? Now, so securitization is the act of what is called putting these instruments together as securities and then making them fungible. Write that down, fungible. F-U-N-G-I-A-B-L-E, fungible. That means monetizing them. Are we clear? Understand law. Taking these instruments and making them fungible is unlawful and illegal according to law and federal accepted accounting principles. Are we clear? That it is unlawful and illegal for all corporations and corporate entities. So, even when they do that and then put you on the wrong side of the ledger books that they keep in the name of the estate, which is why they do the all capital letters so that you cannot immediately accuse them of human trafficking. So they put it in all capital letters and then you don't contest it, which means that you're agreeing that that's you, then they convert the debt on you. That's called conversion. Are we clear? And this is how they pretty much operate. So that's the trick in a nutshell. And of course, in a study platform, as you all have studied, you can go into more detail, but I've given you a synopsis of the trick behind securities and securitization. And so any of these instruments, when they're put into the system, promissory note is put with them. But keep also this in mind, and this is what we've always reminded people whenever there's an issue, an argument with any of these persons that are representatives of any of these agencies, is that the promissory note must never be separated from the mortgage from the beginning until the termination of the alleged, I didn't say loan, alleged loan or agreement between the alleged creditor and debtor. If at any time the promissory note is separated, the claim of the alleged creditor, which is the corporate state or subdivisional agencies who have claimed to represent the estate relationship between yourself and them, is void. Are we clear? If they can get you to start arguing quote unquote money and payment, you already don't understand what's going on, which is why most people lose arguments when it comes to the IRS and also mortgage foreclosure issues. They start talking about money and payment and it has nothing to do with either one, but yet they'll initiate that conversation, get you on it, then you're declared incompetent because it's set off. Write this down. Discharged or set off. That's the only thing that takes place. And the only thing that ever took place. So this is why they start getting you talking about, I paid this and I paid that. Get you start saying it. And at that time, at that point, you lie. Are we clear? And again, what you want is a reversion of your estate and what is called recoupment of what you gave them. Because once they accepted the promissory note, and put it on, see, because the bank operations and the barrister's operations, when they receive these instruments from you, whether they're birth certificates, marriage certificates, mortgage instruments, etc., promissory notes, which they use against you when they're making claims, understand, they put it on their asset side. So therefore, that same IOU becomes what you call an asset. So therefore, that makes you the grantor. Are we clear? Because then they create bonds from it. And from that signature, because you're the heir of the estate, not knowing that you're dealing with the estate. See, you're thinking you're getting something. Are we clear? And because the asset is placed on their side or the bank side as assets, therefore you're the grantor. And you have, and then they start using it on the stock market. Are we clear? So all things received on it, they're supposed to be sending it to you, but you don't get that. You get bills, don't you? Are we clear? Then to protect themselves from the fraud, they'll immediately, within 72 hours, usually sell it to another holder, trustee, and then you get a note in the mail talking about it's a new mortgage holder. Sometimes you might get that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And you ain't figured out what's happening? That's what's happening. Securitization. Are we clear? All of it is unlawful and illegal, and you're declared a tenant and a sharecropper, and you thinking that you're paying the building off or that you own it, and you don't. Are we clear? And then when they get ready for it, they come in under the claim of eminent domain and take the house, whether you so-called made payments or not. Are we clear? So, when you give her the mic, please.
Islam, I just want, before we get too far, I want to ask a couple questions that popped up in the report. One was, how then does one purchase or buy a home?
See, you don't really purchase or buy. Now, let's back up.
Well, yeah, okay, I'm just giving you the question. I want to know that in light of what you said, how does one acquire a home? They said buy. And the other person said, does this also go for the purchase of automobiles? So.
Yes, this is why you got this bubble coming up. All right, let's go back to this again. How do we start off? And but you already know, I said if we had another board, I could add to this. Car, what is called auto registration, is a registration of the property to the corporate state, not to you. This is the reason why the members of the gangs of New York, who call themselves policemen, can come and tell you they'll buckle up in their car or put you out on the street and take it. Or if you haven't made a contract with their buddy who gives the politician kickbacks called the insurance company, they'll also take their car from underneath you, leave you on the damn highway. And if you resist, they'll lock you up. Some people, they kill them. The assumption that you bought the car under the United States corporation company that you thought was a country protecting your rights is where the deception comes in. In other words, the whole platform is a fraud, and the idea is to convince the people that they own things, that they're buying things. This is why we're saying what they're discharged or set off. As an example, how many people know what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in 1933 when they confiscated the people's gold? Real quick, answer. No, give the mic, and then I want you to have the mic back again. After you answer the question, then give it back to her.
He dissolved the United States government.
Say it again?
He dissolved the United States government.
All right, the United States, the legitimate United States government was overthrown and dissolved in 1861 after Lincoln bankrupted the United States Service Corporation in France. This has much to do with your Civil War era. And since that Civil War, the bank bonds to back that debt was put on the defeated Moors who were branded Negro, Black, and colored since the Civil War. That's the source of your economic problems. This is why we told you these things before. So